I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment things began to change between Marlene and me. Maybe it crept in gradually, like a slow-moving fog I didn't notice until it clouded everything. Or perhaps it all unraveled in an instant, the moment she looked at me, not with affection or even resentment, but with plain indifference. That night is etched in my memory with absolute clarity. I had just come back from work, worn out but anticipating a peaceful evening. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, something sharp and floral, but there was an undertone that felt strange, a kind of tension that didn't have a name. She was already seated at the dinner table, a wine glass in hand, her fingers idly tracing circles along the rim. She spoke those familiar, dreaded words, "We need to talk." That phrase alone should have sent warning signals screaming through me, but I was too drained to react. I lowered myself into the seat across from her, forcing a faint, uncertain smile. "What's bothering you?" I asked. She watched me for a long beat, as if weighing whether to go through with it. Then she did. "I don't think you're a real man." I laughed, more out of disbelief than humor. It felt surreal, like she hadn't actually said it. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, trying to keep a calm tone. Marlene leaned back slightly, letting the wine swirl in her glass before sipping. "You're predictable. Safe. I don't feel anything exciting anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, sinking deep and heavy. "I work hard. I take care of you. I do everything I can." She raised a hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Exactly. You think being responsible is enough. But it's not. You don't take risks. You never lead. There's no fire." I stared at her, struggling to process what was happening. The woman I had committed my life to was sitting in front of me, telling me that everything I believed made me a good partner wasn't enough for her. "So, what are you saying?" My voice came out softer, almost fragile. She placed the glass down, resting her chin on her hand. "I don't know, Gerald. I just feel like I need more." That single word, more, carried a weight I couldn't describe. It sounded simple, but behind it was something massive, something threatening. I really looked at her then. The unnatural calm, the absence of warmth in her eyes, the way she didn't seem to be seeking understanding, it all added up. This wasn't a discussion. It was a verdict. And that's when the truth clicked. She wanted me to feel diminished, to feel like I had failed her. That way, she wouldn't have to carry any guilt for what came next. She could walk away without being the one to blame. I forced down the lump in my throat. "Is there someone else already?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, a faint, knowing smile forming at her lips. She stayed silent. And in that moment, the silence was louder than any answer. Something inside me didn't shatter with anger or heartbreak. It broke open with a strange clarity. I had poured years into being the kind of husband I thought she wanted. I believed that love was about being steady, present, loyal. But Marlene wasn't looking for that. She craved unpredictability. She wanted something wild and chaotic. That's when I decided. If she saw me as lacking, maybe it was time to stop trying to meet her standards. Maybe I needed to redefine myself entirely. I stood up slowly. "All right, Marlene," I said with a calm steadiness. "If that's truly how you feel, I won't fight you." She looked stunned. It was clear she had expected pleading, maybe even a meltdown. But I simply picked up my jacket, grabbed my keys, and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. Without looking back, I replied, "To figure out what comes next." And I walked out. That moment was just the beginning. I drove for what felt like forever. I didn't know where I was headed, only that I needed to be anywhere but that house. The road stretched out endlessly in front of me, shrouded in darkness. My headlights sliced through the night, guiding me while my thoughts scrambled to keep up with everything that had just unraveled. Her words looped in my mind. "You're not a real man." I gripped the steering wheel harder, my hands tightening until my knuckles turned pale. What did she even mean by that? I had given her everything: security, commitment, love. Wasn't that what being a partner meant? Apparently not. She wanted more. More excitement. More thrill. More of something that I didn't have, or didn't show. But what haunted me most was her silence when I had asked about someone else. That look in her eye, that slight smirk, it said it all without a word. She wanted me to doubt. She wanted me to feel unworthy. And for a moment, she had succeeded. But that was over now. I pulled into a gas station, parking under the dull flicker of overhead lights. My hands were still trembling, and I needed a moment to collect myself. Stepping out of the car, I let the crisp night air hit my face, cooling the heat in my chest. I walked inside. The place was almost empty, save for a middle-aged man behind the counter, his thick mustache and tired eyes giving the impression of someone who had seen more nights than he cared to count. I grabbed a bottle of water, paid for it, and was just about to return to my car when I came to a sudden halt. Leaning against the store counter was a man, laughing into his phone. He had that unmistakable look, an expensive watch on his wrist, custom-fitted clothes, and the kind of ease that came from knowing he was desirable. "Yeah, man, she couldn't get enough of me," he was saying with a grin. "Told me her husband was a total bore." He laughed again, clearly entertained. Can you believe it? Some poor guy out there thinks he's got his life all figured out, while his wife's sneaking around behind his back. I froze where I stood. Every instinct kicked into overdrive. He hadn't mentioned a name or given any specifics, but there was something about his smug tone that sent a chill through me. Without even realizing it, I found myself walking toward him. "Who's the woman?" I asked, my voice steady, calm. He glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. "Sorry, what?" "The woman you're bragging about," I repeated, holding his gaze. "What's her name?" For a brief moment, he just looked at me, caught off guard. Then, slowly, a grin stretched across his face. "You think I'm talking about your wife," he said, amused. "If you have to ask that, then deep down, you already know." Something inside me snapped. I had spent years being the dependable husband, the one who kept the peace, who always prioritized her happiness over mine. And for what? Nothing but betrayal. I stepped in closer, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive. The confidence on his face flickered ever so slightly. He hadn't expected a challenge. He probably thought I'd walk away, embarrassed and defeated. But not tonight. "Enjoy it while you can," I said, voice level. "Because it won't last." Without waiting for his reply, I turned and walked out. I didn't need to confirm whether it was Marlene he was referring to. I already understood the type of man she gravitated toward. Even if it wasn't this exact guy, it was someone like him. But things were about to change. She had spent years crafting me into the perfect, predictable husband. That version of me no longer existed. I got into my car, started the engine, and smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. This wasn't the conclusion. It was the beginning of something new. I didn't return home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove without a destination, letting the empty roads unravel in front of me like a blank canvas, ready for a fresh start. The weight that had been pressing on my chest had lifted, replaced by something sharper clarity I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, I found myself at a diner on the edge of town that never closed. It was the kind of place where the coffee tasted burnt, the floor was always a little sticky, and the staff had seen enough of life to be unbothered by anyone's drama. I slid into a booth and rubbed my face with both hands. My body was drained, but my mind wouldn't rest. Marlene filled my thoughts. That little smirk she wore when she thought she was untouchable. That silent way she dismissed me as if I'd become invisible. Had she ever truly respected me? Or was I just a convenient placeholder while she hunted for someone more exciting? The question sat heavy in my gut. "What can I get you, Han?" I looked up. A woman in her late 40s stood beside the table, pen ready above her notepad. Her name tag read Gloria, and her eyes were kind. "Just coffee," I replied. She nodded and walked off with a shuffle. I leaned back, eyes drifting to the window. Outside, the neon sign blinked unevenly, missing half its letters. It was fitting, like my entire life had been rearranged overnight, leaving me to figure out what remained. When Gloria returned with the coffee, she gave me a sympathetic glance. "Rough night?" I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, something like that." She didn't ask more. She just turned to refill the sugar containers, humming softly to herself. That's when it really hit me. For the first time in ages, I was truly alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. No expectations, no pressure. No one waiting at home with a tired sigh and a disappointed look. And instead of feeling hollow, I felt something else. Relief. For too long, I had been clinging to Marlene, twisting myself into someone I thought she wanted. But maybe I didn't need to do that anymore. Maybe I could be someone entirely different, someone of my own choosing. Maybe it was time to stop grieving what I'd lost and start building something better. I took a sip of the bitter coffee and made a decision. I wasn't going back tonight. Maybe not ever. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Only one name stood out, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I hovered for a second, then pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Gerald? Man, I thought you were dead." I laughed softly and shook my head. "Nope. Just long overdue for a change." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a knowing sigh. "Marlene." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." She finally crossed the line. Huh. Took her long enough. Glad you finally opened your eyes. I frowned. What's that even supposed to mean? I asked, confused. It means, my longtime friend replied, I've been silently waiting for years for you to understand that she was never worthy of you. I fixated on the worn edge of my coffee cup, his words settling in like dust. Maybe, just maybe, he had a point. And maybe it was finally time I stopped running from that truth. That evening, I ended up at one of those rundown motels you only see in movies, where the neon sign flickers like a trapped bug and the rooms tell stories better left unheard. I didn't care. I just needed somewhere to breathe and clear my mind. The bed sagged in the middle, the walls felt paper-thin, and a faint odor of old cigarettes hung in the air. Still, despite all that, it was the first time in what felt like forever that I could actually breathe deep, honest breaths. Sitting at the edge of the bed, I stared down at my phone, Gerald's voice still replaying in my mind. He had said he'd waited for years for me to wake up and see that she never truly valued me. Had I really been that blind? My thoughts wandered back to those early days, back when Marlene and I had just begun. Everything had felt effortless back then. She had this way of making me feel like I had won some kind of cosmic lottery. But now, standing at a distance, I could see everything I'd ignored. She was always searching for something more attention, more thrill, more of something I couldn't quite name. Whenever life grew steady, she grew restless, like a bird pecking at the bars of its cage. The truth was, the problem wasn't me. It was that I had shaped my entire life around a woman who was never meant to stay still. Leaning back against the creaky headboard, I let my gaze follow the jagged lines on the ceiling. What was I supposed to do now? I had never been the spontaneous type. I had always stuck to plans, played things safe. But maybe that had been the issue all along. I unlocked my phone again. The home screen still showed a picture from last summer, me and Marlene on a weekend trip. She was leaning against me, smiling. But now, looking at that photo with new eyes, I saw it. That distance in her expression. That quiet detachment. I should have noticed it then. I should have seen what was right in front of me. My thumb hovered over her name in my contacts. For years, I had been the one to reach out, the one to apologize first, to glue us back together before cracks could widen. But tonight, I didn't want to patch things up. I didn't want to salvage what was left. I let out a slow breath and did something I never imagined I'd have the strength to do. I erased her number from my phone. And with that small action, a strange calm washed over me. Marlene had made her choice long ago. It was time for me to make mine. For the first time in many years, I didn't know what the next day would bring. And oddly enough, that uncertainty thrilled me. The sharp squeal of tires in the motel parking lot jolted me awake. For a moment, I was disoriented, my eyes searching the unfamiliar room. The cracked ceiling, the stiff sheets, the dim morning light, all reminders that I was no longer in my home. And for the first time in a decade, I wasn't waking up beside Marlene. There was no hum of her blow dryer from the bathroom, no trace of her signature perfume in the air. No tense silence filled with cold glances while she mindlessly scrolled through her phone, pretending I didn't exist. I had always assumed that if I ever walked away, I'd be overwhelmed with guilt or swallowed by doubt. But what I felt instead was an overwhelming sense of freedom, a deep-seated relief that wrapped around me like a warm coat. This was meant to happen. I could feel it in my bones. I rubbed a hand down my face and sat upright. Golden rays slipped through the dust-covered blinds, casting lines across the floor. I checked my phone out of habit, 12 missed calls. All from her. Not a single message. No apologies. No, can we talk? Just those unanswered calls. It wasn't reconciliation she wanted, it was control. She hadn't expected me to walk away. She thought I'd chase after her, beg her to stay, plead for another chance. She was waiting for me to prove myself. Again. But she had been wrong. I wasn't going to chase someone who had long since stopped seeing my worth. I wasn't going to play the part she had scripted for me. I wasn't going to fight for a connection that she had already let wither. I tossed the phone aside and stood up, stretching the stiffness from my body. Today was going to be different. I didn't have a clear roadmap, but one thing was certain. I wasn't turning back. I shrugged on my jacket, pocketed my keys, and stepped outside. The cold air slapped my face like a reminder. This was real. And instead of making me recoil, it made me feel more awake than I'd felt in years. Truly alive. For the first time, I had no plan at all. And that was the most unfamiliar part of this entire journey. Everything I had built my life on, careful decisions, responsibility, predictability, was behind me now. Despite everything, there I was, driving along a seemingly endless stretch of highway with no real plan or destination. My only companions were a duffel bag filled with clothes and a coffee cup, half full and cooling in the holder. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel caged in. A faint static hummed from the radio, barely carrying the tune of a classic rock song I couldn't quite name. The open road unraveled before me, and for once, I wasn't bracing myself for Marlene's next jab. She had a way of shrinking me, of stripping away pieces of who I was, and the worst part? I had let it happen. Her disapproval had etched itself into my routine. I adjusted everything, my voice, my stride, even my thoughts, to fit what she might find acceptable. Every move I made was weighed against one question. Would this make Marlene content? But that question had finally lost its grip on me. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. I stared at it, tempted to ignore it, but curiosity won out. It was a message from Gerald. Gerald, did you go back? A smirk tugged at my lips. Not a chance. I quickly typed a reply. Me, I think I just quit my life. A few moments passed. Then the typing dots appeared. Gerald. Good. It was never really yours. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. He was right. That life with Marlene? It hadn't belonged to me. I had just been a background figure in her narrative, a temporary fixture until she decided to rewrite the story without me. Now, for the first time, I had a blank page ahead. The idea was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. I pulled off the road when I spotted a diner, one of those old places with flickering neon signs and a parking lot crowded with semis. The kind of place where no one knew your name. It felt like exactly what I needed. A pause, a space to think. As I stepped inside, I was greeted by the scent of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee. A woman in her mid-50s, with kind eyes and a smile that looked like it had weathered years, welcomed me as I slid into a booth. Good morning, Han. What can I get for you? She asked warmly. Just coffee, I said, then after a beat, added, and maybe some pancakes. I think I need to remember what real food tastes like when it's not eaten in total silence. She chuckled and made a quick note. Rough night? She asked. I paused, then gave a slight nod. Rough decade. Her look said she understood more than she let on before she turned away. I leaned back, letting the seat cushion hold me for a moment as I took it all in. This was the first time in ages I had ordered something just for myself. Not to fit some image. Not to keep the peace. Just because I wanted pancakes. And somehow, that small choice felt monumental, like the first real decision I'd made in years. When the plate arrived, the pancakes were steaming, soaked in syrup, with crispy bacon on the side. The aroma alone made my stomach growl. I hadn't even realized how hungry I was until then. I took my first bite, expecting just an average meal, but it hit me differently. Maybe it was because, for once, I wasn't across from Marlene watching her nibble on a salad while silently judging my plate. She used to say things like, "You're really eating that?" Her tone always laced with amusement, her expression smug. Worse were the pitying stares, those long looks that made me feel small, like I was a child who didn't know better. I forced those images away and focused on the moment. This meal was mine. This experience was mine. The waitress came back with a fresh pot of coffee. Her name tag read, Linda. She refilled my mug and hesitated slightly before speaking. Just passing through, or running from something? She asked gently. I gave a small chuckle and stirred the coffee in my cup. Maybe a little bit of both. She gave me a knowing nod. That's how most people end up here. I took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. And you? I asked. She smiled softly, shaking her head. Oh, I ran a long time ago. Just kind of stopped here. There was something final in her tone, like that was all she intended to share. I respected that, and she moved on to another table. I turned my focus back to my phone. Another message from Gerald lit up the screen. Gerald, you still breathing? Me, eating pancakes like a free man. His reply was instant. Gerald, proud of you. Now what's the plan? That made me stop. The plan? For years, the plan had revolved around Marlene. Keeping her content, maintaining the illusion of a well-ordered life, sticking to a script we wrote together. But that script had been torn apart. I looked around at the other diners, truckers, travelers, folks with their own tales, their own baggage. I had spent my life trying to be someone's rock, someone's version of ideal. Maybe it was finally time to be someone real. Just me. For the first time, I don't have one. I typed back. Gerald's reply came fast. Gerald, then maybe you're finally doing it right. I breathed out slowly. He had a point. For once, I wasn't chasing after something that was already broken. I wasn't trying to repair what had long since crumbled. I wasn't measuring every word or step, afraid of upsetting someone. I was just here, simply existing. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, that was more than enough. After finishing my pancakes, I left a generous tip for Linda and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. Everything around me felt somehow lighter, as if the world itself had shifted. I slid into my car, wrapped my hands around the steering wheel, and smiled to myself. This time, I wasn't running from anything. I was heading towards something new, something unknown. I didn't bother looking at my phone. I wasn't searching for missed calls or scrolling through messages. I wasn't bracing for a last-minute plea from Marlene trying to draw me back into her orbit. None of that held any weight now. For the first time ever, I wasn't looking for anyone else's direction. I wasn't trying to squeeze myself into a version of life someone else had decided was right for me. I wasn't treading a road that had already been drawn. I had broken free. As the diner disappeared in the rearview mirror and the tires hummed against the pavement, I rejoined the highway. The road unfolded in front of me, vast and without limits. I didn't know where I was heading, and strangely, that uncertainty felt perfect. I lowered the window, letting the fresh morning breeze rush in and fill my lungs. It wasn't just air, it was the feeling of new beginnings, of endless possibilities. Marlene had once accused me of not being a real man. She said I lacked excitement, that I was too safe, too ordinary. But she had never understood the true essence of strength. Strength isn't about bravado or making a scene. It's about recognizing when it's time to let go. It's about seeing your value beyond someone else's judgment. It's about finally deciding to choose yourself. And as I continued along the highway, heading toward whatever future lay ahead, something clicked inside me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was truly happy.